Hello, I'm George Rodriguez, a business manager specialized in the agribusiness market in Latin America and founder of AgroLatam Intel, a technical consultancy focused on bringing cutting-edge knowledge to formulators, mills, and input companies. Today, I'd like to talk to you about a strategic move that could reposition São Paulo's sugar energy sector on the global climate agenda. The pilot project for biogenic carbon capture and storage announced by the state government of São Paulo. What is at stake here goes far beyond a new engineering project. We are talking about the concrete possibility of producing sugarcane ethanol that is carbon negative. In other words, a biofuel that removes more carbon from the atmosphere through the sugarcane growth cycle than it emits across its entire production and use chain. In a world that is rapidly putting a price on emissions, building carbon markets, and demanding robust sustainability metrics, this represents a huge competitive advantage for Brazilian agribusiness, and especially for sugarcane. Let us look at the technical architecture of the project. The State of São Paulo has announced the creation of the Center for Biogenic Carbon Capture and Storage Technologies, CTCCSBio, a new science for development center funded by FAPESP and hosted at the Polytechnic School of the University of São Paulo. This center has been established in partnership with the Secretariat for Environment, Infrastructure and Logistics, with Petrobras and with the sugar energy productive sector. And it has a very clear mission: to study the feasibility and plan the implementation of Brazil's first plant dedicated to capturing and storing carbon emitted in sugarcane ethanol production. The project is structured in two phases over 5 years, with an estimated investment of around BRL 30 million. In the first phase, lasting roughly 2 years, the focus will be on scouting suitable locations for the plant and assessing São Paulo's potential to employ BECCS technology, bioenergy with carbon capture and storage. This stage involves geological mapping of reservoirs, studying rock formation properties, analyzing proximity to mills, reviewing existing infrastructure, costs, environmental impact, and social perception regarding CO2 storage in the subsurface. In the second phase, the project moves on to the actual implementation and operation of the plant, dedicated to capturing CO2 generated from sugarcane ethanol. Brazil already has one capture and storage plant for corn ethanol, and the São Paulo facility will be the first specifically oriented towards sugarcane ethanol, reinforcing São Paulo's position, currently the country's largest producer of sugar and ethanol, as a leader in the energy transition based on agricultural bioenergy. From an institutional perspective, CTCCSBio is not an isolated effort. It relies on a strong research network. In addition to PolyUSP, it involves the Energy and Environment Institute at USP, the Mechanical Engineering Division at ITA, the Center for Energy and Petroleum Studies at Unicamp, the Institute of Geosciences and Exact Sciences at UNESP in Rio Claro, and the Mackenzie Center for Integrity Policies. This combination brings together expertise in process engineering, geosciences, energy, regulation, and public policy. Precisely the kind of multidisciplinary approach needed for BECCS to move from concept to operational solution. CTCCSBio's director Bruno Souza Carmo points out that CO2 capture and storage technologies already exist. The center's true challenge is to adapt them and demonstrate their technical, economic, and institutional feasibility in the specific context of São Paulo and the sugar energy value chain. In other words, the goal is not to reinvent physics, but to prove that capturing and injecting biogenic CO2 from sugarcane into geological reservoirs can be safe, traceable, and economically worthwhile for all the agents involved. Now let us examine this initiative through the eyes of a senior agronomist and a formulation chemist working in B2B. In the field, the concept of carbon-negative ethanol shines a direct spotlight on agronomic management, soil preparation, fertilization, use of nitrogen fertilizers, choice and application rate of crop protection products, adjuvants, biologicals, and conservation practices all begin to influence, in measurable terms, the carbon balance of sugarcane. What used to be a more theoretical discussion is now being translated into emission figures, life cycle assessments, and soon into price differentials and market access conditions. On the industrial side, fermentation, distillation, cogeneration with biomass combustion and vinasse treatment gain new relevance because any efficiency gain that reduces emissions or facilitates CO2 capture can be converted into financial value via carbon credits or supply contracts for regulated markets. For companies formulating products for equipment cleaning, microbiological control in fermentation, optimization of mass transfer or boiler management, the conversation moves to a new level. We are no longer discussing productivity and cost alone, but also climate performance. What are the main advantages of this project? First, it consolidates São Paulo and Brazil as a reference in advanced bioenergy, showing the world that it is possible to go beyond low-carbon ethanol and move towards carbon-negative ethanol. Second, the initiative creates structural demand for integrated solutions across agronomy, formulation, engineering, and emissions management, opening space for input, service, and technology companies that wish to position themselves as partners in decarbonizing the sugarcane chain. Third, treating biogenic CO2 as an environmental asset in the form of carbon credits can unlock new revenue streams and help finance technological transition in mills. However, there are also important downsides and points of attention. As with any pilot project, many questions remain unanswered. What will the initial capture scale be? How will the cost curve behave? How will benefits be shared among mills, traders, growers, and technology providers? So far, official communications have not detailed numerical targets or value-sharing mechanisms along the chain. Furthermore, BECCS involves substantial capital expenditure, requires clear regulation of geological storage, and demands long-term monitoring to ensure CO2 remains stable in the reservoir. Another crucial point, if financial benefits are concentrated only among large integrated players, without instruments reaching farmers, there is a risk that decarbonization will be perceived as an industrial issue, disconnected from realities on the ground. For the project to succeed in policy and social terms, it is essential that incentive programs, differentiated offtake contracts, and carbon footprint measurement tools genuinely include sugarcane growers. From the perspective of agro-inputs, the message is straightforward. Companies formulating crop protection products, adjuvants, fertilizers, and biologicals for sugarcane must begin now to review their portfolios, sustainability data, technical communication, and strategic positioning. Sugarcane's carbon matrix inevitably depends on effective pest and disease control, reduced fermentation losses, proper residue management, and deployment of biological technologies that enhance soil health and emission mitigation. Organizations able to demonstrate with data that their products help mills and growers improve carbon balance will have a competitive edge in this new phase. At AgroLatam Intel, our view is that this carbon capture project in sugarcane ethanol is a positive wake-up call for the entire agro-inputs and services industry. It shows that the carbon agenda is no longer a distant narrative. It is already translating into concrete investments, dedicated research centers, and projects that will demand metrics, methodologies, and robust partnerships. As managers, agronomists, and formulators, we must decide whether we simply react to these changes or lead them, building integrated solutions that connect the field, the plant, and the carbon market. If you work with sugarcane, bioenergy, or agro-inputs and want to understand how to position your organization in this emerging scenario of carbon-negative ethanol, keep following our content and reach out to AgroLatam Intel. Together, we can turn climate challenges into real business opportunities for agribusiness in Latin America.